Hello everyone, welcome back to Legends of the Spire for another player interview looking at the former players and managers of Chesterfield FC. Now last time out we had a chat with Steve Spooner. I hope you enjoyed listening to that one. This week we are staying with the alliterative first name last name terms by going for a chat with Bob Bloomer. Now it's really lovely having a chat with Bob. He was with Chesterfield from like the mid 80s to early 90s before then having a long career at places like in Bristol, at Cheltenham, where he was at Cheltenham for ages and ages and ages. He now works for the EFL, so interesting what he's gone on to do and how he stayed in the game kind of post-playing. And we had loads and loads of chat just about all the players that he used to play with, goals that he remembers, games that stick out in the mind, especially scoring against Sheffield United, which was really good fun. So I hope you all enjoy the chat today. Big thanks to Phil Tooley and Paul Keller, who put in a good word when Bob did some commentary in pre-season when we were down his way. So big thanks to them as always for putting in a good word. They have done it a lot and they deserve a mention. As always, I am at Spy Legends on Twitter and Instagram. And you can also find us on Facebook as well. Just search for Legends of the Spire. And there's also the latest issue of Linda's Sandwich Shop fanzine. If you haven't got it already, please do grab a copy. But here we are with the latest episode with the one and only Bob Bloomer. Great to have a chat with him and hope you enjoy it. Here we go. You were kind of born in World Cup year, weren't you? So yeah, I suppose it's destined that you were going to be a footballer.
Yeah, you could say that. 1966 and all that. And yeah, from as long back as I can remember, I wanted to be a footballer and used to kick a ball around like many young kids do on the streets and dream of being professional. And yeah, I was lucky enough for it to be realised.
Yeah, and obviously Sheffield, it's a football mad city, isn't it? So kind of growing up around Derbyshire, Yorkshire, everywhere, it's I suppose like the whole country, it's all just football mad, isn't it? So was that the only other sport for you, football?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I enjoyed many other sports and played them at school, but football was always my focus. I always came back to that and always was, even though I enjoyed playing tennis and cricket and badminton, numerous other athletics and stuff. Football was my number one focus, and that's where I wanted to go first and foremost. And then, if not, then would I be good enough to play any other sport? Probably not. Even though I did all right at one or two of them. And yeah, growing up in Sheffield, it was the blue or the red, Wednesday or United, and my family were predominantly, well, if not all, Wednesdayites. So as always, you get sort of ingrained into that usually. Not many go, no, I want to go on the other side.
Yeah.
But when I was younger, I was like a lot of others, followed the best team at the time. So when I was really, getting into football, I suppose, playing, kicking it around at 4 and 5 years old, early 70s, it was Leeds United. And sort of, being interested in them, with them being the best team, like a lot of young kids do. But yeah, the moment I was old enough to go to games, it was down the road to Hillsborough, and that was it.
Who were the players that you really liked watching them when you were growing up?
Well, it would be those greats at Leeds, of the 70s. Alan Clark, Eddie Gray, Peter Lorimer with his hot shot was tried to reminisce, and many a garage and garden gate got battered from me trying to kick it as hard as I could.
I live in Leeds, so I'm not far from where Jack Charlton used to live. I'm kind of down the road from his old house.
Yeah, and as it happened, when I was playing, I started playing obviously for school, and then got into Sunday football in my sort of early teens.
Mm.
And the first serious team I played for was Middlewood Juniors, which was Sheffield Wednesday's nursery team, their schoolboy team. And as it happened, Jack Charlton was manager then.
Oh.
He would have been the first team manager around that sort of time. What would that have been? Late 70s.
Yeah.
And yeah, my first taste, if you like, of a professional club was training at Middlewood and with Sheffield Wednesday's under-15s. And yeah, and playing for their Sunday side.
I always remember Sean O'Neill, obviously, when he was at Leeds, used to get picked up by Jack Charlton and said his car was just full of fishing gear.
Yeah, keen fishing money, Jack.
So how did you end up at Chesterfield then? Because was it around that time it was whole was it Jamie Hewitt at the time talking about blue forms and things like that around? How did it kind of work for you?
Yeah, well, as I said, I was a schoolboy at Sheffield Wednesday. Didn't get offered an apprenticeship as it was then. And they only used to sign 1 and 2 players. So it was, it was the very best players that used to get signed, and it was more difficult, if you like, than it is, I suppose, I was later on with more funding being available. But even so, it was not on the cards for me at Sheffield Wednesday. So then I played. They had an under-18s team, which wasn't really linked with the club. Then it was different. The funding was different and everything. So it was called Middlewood Juniors, but it wasn't part of the club. So I played with them for a bit, and then I would have been 16 then, 16, 17, and got myself a job working in a factory, earning me keep, but still dreaming of being a footballer. So while I was playing with my mates for Middlewood Juniors and then just a pub team in Sheffield, I just carried on writing letters, and the chap who used to pick up those letters and take young players up to Chesterfield from the Sheffield area, because that's how they branched out and recruited, was a guy called Derek Cluley. And unbeknownst to me, he was involved in that. He was my neighbour. He lived across the road. And it come to my door, knocked on my door, and I thought, what have I done now? I kicked another ball against his gate or garage, upset him. All right, Derek. And he's, I've just received a letter for you to come to Chesterfield for a trial. And I'm sort of puzzled when, how come you got it? Explained, and that's where it started. So he arranged to pick me up from when I left work in town, in Sheffield town centre, along with a couple of other lads, and used to take us up to what was Eckington, I think we first used to train at. One floodlight to cover a whole pitch that weren't the greatest, and people, some of the lads who you've done talks with before might have already spoke about Eckington.
Yeah, a few mentioned Eckington.
So we used to train there, and also we used to just go to the ground. So we'd go to Saltergate and either do some running around the pitch if it was fitness work, or if we were getting the balls out, we'd be kicking them around under the stand, dodging Anthony's tractor and a few spades. And so that was our training area. We used to do that twice a week, and I did that for probably, I don't know, 6 months or so, maybe even longer than that. Probably longer than that. Probably best part of a season, I would think, and that would have been. What would that have been? That would have been the season that Chesterfield were going for promotion.
Yeah, I've seen your name on
84?
Yeah, you can see the on the Chesterfield history website, which is brilliant, by the way. It's got
Mm.
lineups of reserves and youth teams and first teams and all sorts. And I've seen your
Yeah,
name a few times in the 84-85 season, which was obviously the season we won promotion. I see your name in there quite a lot in that kind of
yeah,
reserves
that would
kind
have
of section.
been exactly that. I would have been playing. That would have been my first experience of playing reserve football, and um, for the under 18 team on Saturday mornings, we used to have some really good games. Actually, we used to
Mm.
play the likes of Coventry and Derby and Aston Villa. I mean, I remember some of the places we used to go, and it were fantastic games for
Yeah.
Chesterfield to be playing. So we had that. We had those games on a Saturday morning, and then we also used to play in the I think it was called the Midland Floodlit League, and we used to, it was again a young team. I don't know whether it was an under 18 team or whether it was part of the reserves, but we used to play in that league against Arnold and
Mm.
Shepshed Dynamo or Shepshed Charterhouse, whatever they was called then. All the teams in and around Derbyshire and Nottinghamshire, Lincoln United, Leicester United. There's all these teams that I'd not really heard of before that we went and played, and they were like men's teams, and we were generally lads my age. So they were tough games. It was a tough
So he's getting used to a few
learning
kicks
school.
and
Definitely, yeah. And it was what we did.
it must have been lovely then to be around Chesterfield at the time of the first team doing so well then and having all that success. Did you spend a lot of time with them, or were
Well,
you
it
kind of
was,
quite?
but it was good, yeah. But I wasn't around it. I wasn't,
Mm.
in all honesty, I wasn't around the first team environment then. It was just going up there twice a week to train and playing these either games against the academies or they weren't academies then. They're just they're under
Mm.
18s teams on Saturday mornings, and then these midweek games in this Midland Floodlit League.
Yeah.
And it weren't until the following season that I started to um, get a little bit of involvement.
Yeah.
Um, and I think my first game, I think it was against Mansfield. My first senior
Mm.
game, I think, was against Mansfield um, in the whatever that cup was called then. Was it been Sherpa Van or
Yeah, it was
was
before it was called Sherpa Van. I've got the name of
it
it here. Where is it?
Auto
Uh,
Blast?
the Freight Rover Trophy,
Right, Rover, there you go.
which it says was against Darlington. I think your
That was
David
that
says it was
the
against Darlington in the Freight Rover
first.
Trophy,
Right, okay.
which is what is now the Papa John's, is it? Or the
Mm.
it's been had
Well,
so many different names, hasn't
maybe
it?
it was an arranged game then, arranged friendly game against Mansfield that I'm
Could be.
thinking of. Because if there was no games, say we'd been knocked out of the FA Cup or
Mm.
whatever, I remember them arranging games, and I think it might have been one of them. I
Yeah,
just
maybe.
seem to remember that it was against Mansfield where I made my first senior
Mm.
appearance. I might be wrong. It might be like my second or third game. Um, and yeah, that would have been sort of the following season after he got promoted, I guess, 84, 85,
Yeah, 80, 85, 86.
85, 86, yeah.
Yeah, so I was looking at in that season, I think you made like 6 appearances. I think that season,
Yeah.
I've got your league debut was a 3-2 defeat at Bournemouth.
At Bournemouth, yeah.
Yeah. What was that like, kind of getting league debut?
Yeah, I mean, I just like I said, at this time I was still a non-contract player. I was still only training part time,
Mm.
and yeah, I'd sort of played a few games, behind closed doors games and one or two friendlies, and then got the call up to play um, against Bournemouth, and yeah, it was weird for me because all growing up, that's where we used to go every year for our holidays, summer holidays. to Bournemouth, so I was really familiar with that as a place.
Mm.
So I suppose it's destiny to make
Must
your
be.
debut there at Old Dean Court, and it was a time when Jerry Armstrong came, and I'm not sure whether that was his debut or one of his first games
Could have
when
been.
he came on loan to the club. And yeah, I made my debut on a cold night. I remember it being freezing cold night, and we made a good fist of it, but lost the game. But yeah, great experience for me in my first game, even though we'd lost. And then I just remember getting back at Chesterfield at God knows o'clock, and missing the last train. Me and Phil Brown, getting back to the Chesterfield station, missing last train, and sleeping in the station. Sat in the waiting room, and sleeping in there, or chatting away until 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock in the morning when the first milk train, as used to call it, pulled in and we could go.
The glamorous life of being a footballer, right?
That was my debut and the aftermath of it.
That's brilliant. What were the other players? How did they kind of treat you? Because obviously, if you were still trying to get a contract, was it was it helping hand, or was it you go and make the tea?
No, not really, because I weren't a rookie, I don't think. Well, I was, but I was approaching 19, and so I weren't classed as an apprentice. I didn't feel as I can't remember being treated like good, do this, do that, do the other as the young kid. They sort of seemed to embrace me straight away. Even though I was the youngest in the team, or one of the youngest. Great, great bunch of experienced players, and it was predominantly experienced players in there. You got Mossy and Phil Walker up front. You got people like Mick Henderson. Who else was in midfield? I mean, at the outset, it would have been Steve Spooner and Steve Kendall, and then at the back you got Bainesy, Les Hunter, Sean O'Neill, Brian Scrimger. So a lot of experience and lads who just won the fourth division. So they'd had that success and they wanted to carry that on in the third division, and it was tough. That step up, like it was back then. It is now. When any club steps up a league, it's tough to bed yourself in. And even though they were really good players and had that success, it was a tough season because there were some good teams in the third division then.
I remember speaking to John Duncan, bless him, a couple of years ago, and he was talking about how that step up, maybe, or he underestimated the step up, maybe, and he was like, "Oh, they taught me a few things," kind of that season, because it was like it come back 17th, something like that, I think. And you kind of made your debut in the January, I think, that season. So it was
January first game, yeah.
Yeah, so I suppose for you it was a good way of kind of finding your feet that season, because then the next season you made like 31 league appearances, something like that.
That was my first season. Like you said, I had a run of 6 games. John put me in, gave him a debut, and give me a run of games to see, right, is this kid good enough for league football? And after those 6 games, I was obviously spoken to about coming out of the side, and then I suppose that's when your extended apprenticeship starts. Then really, as far as right, we think you've got something to offer as a pro footballer. Let's see where it takes you. And as I said, I was part time still. I was still non-contract then, and it whetted my appetite. So I just left my job and said to John, "Look, can I come in and train full time?" And he said, "Yeah, of course you can. And we'll have a proper look and discussion about a contract." That's what happened. I went in full time, and before long, a full time contract was put on the table for me, and I obviously signed it immediately, and that was the start of my pro career.
This was the incident that so incensed Notts manager Neil Warnock. Andy Morris' tackle on Wayne Fairclough will probably put the Notts player out of the game for the rest of the season. Today Neil Warnock said, "I don't think there's any place in football for a tackle like that." Warnock claims he heard a "well done" comment made by the Chesterfield bench to Andy Morris. Now Chesterfield's chairman Barry Hubbard is considering legal action against Neil Warnock. It was confirmed today that Fairclough hasn't fractured his leg. He does have considerable damage.
Going from part-time to full-time, do you notice yourself getting a lot better, a lot quicker, and getting up to speed? Do you kind of notice that?
I didn't really, no, not fitness-wise. I always felt as though I was a fairly fit lad anyway. But football-wise, yeah, without a shadow of a doubt, learning off the experienced lads there, and not just the actual sharpening up your technical stuff, just everything about it, just everything about being a pro footballer, and learning how to carry yourself and win games, because ultimately, once you become a pro, you get in there, and that's it. It's winning games and trying to be successful, which is what they'd done the previous season. But it was a tough season, that first one in the third division. But in the following season, like you said, I started to break in then, and become a regular, if you like, in the team then.
Yeah. So for any fans watching this that didn't see you play, how would you describe yourself as a player?
Fit, strong, uncompromising. But those three, and then anything associated with that, really. I was never the most graceful player, but I had power, a little bit of pace at my best, and when I was at my best, it was being an all-action midfield player. That's what I was mainly in the team. But then I sort of developed into a bit more of a utility player. I played central midfield a lot at the start, and then I did play one or two other positions in midfield, and also fullback as well. So I developed a little bit more as a utility player, if you like, as my career went on. But midfield was where I enjoyed it the most, and trying to get forward and score goals, because I was a forward when I was playing for Wednesday Juniors. But yeah, I knew I wasn't really an out and out forward type player, and being a midfielder trying to break forward, I enjoyed that, and that's where I had my first sort of 2 or 3 seasons with Chesterfield.
Yeah, and it's funny, when I was talking to Steve Spooner the other day, he was saying that when he joined Chesterfield, he was the type of midfielder that would want to get forward and would leave plenty of gaps in midfield, and that used to really frustrate John Duncan. So he'd be saying, "What are you doing, leaving all that space?" Did you have to play in that position?
I had that conversation. Yeah, I had that conversation. But I quickly learned and tried to adapt my game into being that all-round midfield player, and it probably lent itself for me to be a breaker up of play, and the type of player I was. Lent itself to that being more of my strength, breaking up play and being more of a defensive midfield player, than doing everything and being a real top creative and goal scoring midfield player. Yeah. Although I did have a season where I scored sort of 10 goals, I think, or 11 goals. But then a lot of them were when I was taking penalties. So
it's funny because I think it's a position that's really certainly from my time supporting Chesterfield, and I think even more so recently, it's become a really appreciated position. With the likes of the Derek Nivens or the Sam Morses, or now we've got Tom Naylor in midfield that are there to kind of break down those opposition attacks, aren't they? And play it simple and pass it on. It's a very appreciated position, I feel, nowadays. Was it like that back then?
Yeah, I think so. And I felt that I dovetailed well with one or two players over my time in midfield, likes of Tony Reid, who were really good passers of the ball. So being able to link in with him and be the one who breaks stuff up, and then go on, Tony, you spray it around. And Kevin Arnott was a great player, I thought, for Chesterfield. And we had a really good, I felt, a good relationship where, again, break play up, and Kevin was a really elegant footballer and good passer of the ball, and I felt that, again, we dovetailed well. So that's what I remember from those times, the relationships you had with different midfield players. But then I also had a good one with Adi Shaw as well. We were pretty much identical players, both ball winners, and we could pass it, but we weren't like, neither of us would say, oh, we're a Kevin Arnott type or a Tony Reid type midfield player. But yeah, we were similar, but that worked well for a period as well. So yeah,
pivotal position. So your first goal was a 4-3 win against Wigan.
Yeah, I mean, my first senior goal I remember being against Mansfield.
Okay.
Yeah,
I mean, I've definitely got you scoring against Mansfield a few times.
with a god awful night in the mud. I remember striking this ball, and it, the water coming off the net and all that. There was hardly anybody there, but for me, it could have been in front of 50,000. It was like, I've scored a senior goal. Even though it was not a proper game. But that was different when it happened against Wigan. I mean, we were 3-1 down. Game was done really with 10 minutes to go, and then I forget, was it Tony who scored to make it 3-2?
I think possibly you scored the third, didn't you?
And then I broke into the box, fired it into the top corner from a tight angle. Just one of them where you're in and around the goal, and there's a lot of bodies around, and they just turn and hit it. And then when you look up, and it just goes in that magical top corner, and it's like a 3-3, and you think, wow. And that was like, the place went mad. And then Tony Reid picks the ball up in like the last minute and decides, what, I'll have a shot from here, whatever, 25 yards out, and that flew in the top corner as well. And the place went even more mental. It was like, what a game and what an experience. Me scoring my first senior goal in the league, and us coming from nowhere to from a game we were going to lose, and winning it 4-3.
There's no better feeling, is it? It's like winning 10 games rather than one, isn't it, when something like that happens?
So yeah, amazing. One obviously my main memories of my time there.
And you had another couple that season. I think you scored at Notts County and Fulham, I think. I think we're both defeats maybe, but another couple of goals, which is all good.
Yeah, Notts County one. Dave Caldwell got out wide and put a cross in, and I've just sort of nipped across at the near post and got a sort of glancing header that just came off. And again, as I headed it, I looked round, and you just know it's going over. It was Mick Leonard who was in goal, actually, who came to Chesterfield soon after, knowing it was dropping in the far corner. So yeah, that was a memorable goal again. I mean, I remember most of them. I didn't score tons of them, so if you remind me who I scored against, I'll tell you the goal. Who was the other one? Fulham, yeah,
Fulham,
Fulham.
yeah.
At Craven Cottage. I think it might have been was it the opening goal? I think it put us 1-0 up, didn't it? And didn't we lose the game 3-1?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, you scored against Fulham a couple of times, didn't you? I think.
Yeah, I nipped in, just got it in front of the keeper, went round him and just managed to squeeze it into the empty net. But yeah, unfortunately, they came back at us and beat us 3-1 in that game.
Hereford got off to a flying start, taking the lead with their first real attack. Tester made the break and Darren Peacock applied the goal touch. But before United could build on that lead, Chesterfield had demolished their defence. Dave Waller, top scorer for the past 2 seasons, headed the equaliser. Within minutes, their lead had gone again. The defence opened up and Waller hit his second goal.
So you became like a really pivotal figure in that team, didn't you, for a few seasons? Like 31 appearances that season, and 87-88 was 38 appearances, 88-89, 44. It was, you've had a good stretch of games, didn't you, over those 3 seasons?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was a good time. Like I say, I broke into the team, and then for those 2 or 3 seasons, I was pretty much regular. I had a couple of injuries in amongst that, but other than that, and 1 or 2 minor discretions on the disciplinary side, let's say.
I was going to mention that. It did pop up on the sheet. 12th minute, red card for dissent in the 12th minute. It said.
What was that?
Against Chester? Yeah, Chester. 87-88. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my problem. I got sent off 3 times for Chesterfield, and only the one was, for doing my job and trying to win a ball and just mistiming it and getting sent off for 2 tackles. The other 2 were, from a manager's side, inexcusable, really, just dissent. The Chester one, we were running together, me and a forward called Gary Bennett, and he's thrust his elbow out and smacked me in the face. So I've sort of had a little go back, and then he's booked us both, and I've like, what are you doing? He just smashed me in the face, and I've lost my head, and he's then gone, oh well, if you're going to be like that, you can have a red card, and it was like, yeah. So that was pretty bad, and then the other one for dissent was even worse, against Walsall, where I came on as a sub and was told, go on and make sure we win the game. Mm-hmm. And within 5 minutes, I've given away a penalty. And Willie Norton it was, who's sort of dragged the ball. He was going to cross it, and he's dragged it. And as he's dragged it, I've sort of gone to make a challenge, stopped. Of course, he's clever and just
done his thing,
himself over me, and he's done me basically. And the refs bought it and give a penalty. Of course, I've gone ballistic because, one, I know I've gone on to shore the game up, and now I've given away a penalty. So I've gone berserk. What are you talking about? And he's gone, oh, not having that, red card. So I'm like, trudged off.
Do you make eye contact with the manager, or
straight down the tunnel and just sat in there because there was hardly any time left. And I forget the result, but I'm pretty sure we didn't lose. Otherwise, I'd have probably been strung up, maybe even sacked on the spot. But it was a severe telling off, and told you to go on and shore it up, and you nearly lost us the game. So yeah, that was not a great time.
I've had loads of players that I've spoken to before that have said, cross the white line. I think maybe it was Tony Lawman that I was speaking to. He was saying, cross the white line, completely different person. And sometimes you look at yourself and think, God, what what happened there? I'm not like that, but I suppose you're there to win, aren't you? And it's
Yeah, but sometimes you have to learn the hard way, and that was a step too far. Realizing that you can't just go around, refereeing the game for because they'll send you off, and it happened to me on 2 occasions. It should have just happened on one, and I should have just learnt the first time. So yeah, didn't cover myself in much glory there, and then the other sending off was as I say, was a two tackle thing against Port Vale, and got sent off towards the end of the game, and that was a bit more.
Which in the role you play, I suppose,
it was a bit more of
might happen sometimes.
What happens, not like I say, getting sent off, within 12 minutes of a game and getting sent off within 10 minutes against going on as a sub.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Yeah. So you have to accept that those memories and they're attached to you as well as your good times. But yeah, I would like to think that the positives outweigh those negatives.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Well, also that season you scored. There was a 3-1 win against Mansfield, so I've got that on my list. What was the Mansfield goal? Like,
Mansfield.
This was the game. I think there was an own goal in it. I think Dave Waller scored the other one.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, because I as I said, the Mansfield goal I remember was that one I was speaking about, where I scored in a friendly, and I'm just trying to recollect the one I scored in the 3-1 win. And it is one that's escaping me as far as how it came about. It can't have been anything remarkable. Maybe it was just one of them sort of, rebounds that I picked up and stuck in. I can't remember it being if it had been anything special, I'd have remembered it.
Yeah. Hey, I've not got a clip of it or anything, so if you want to say it was a 50-yard halfway line, chip the keeper, then
I know. Being able to just go, I'll show it you. Here it is.
It's the only overhead kick I ever scored. What were those Mansfield games like? Because obviously it was still obviously fresh in the memory, wasn't it? Still all strikes and things like that was all fresh in the memory.
I mean, yeah, they were at our local derby. They were the closest rivals, weren't they? And so I remember the Mansfield games having that extra spice to them, and Notts County games always were as well.
Yeah, and even now.
And we didn't really play against the 2 Sheffield teams until later on, when we played Sheffield United. Didn't play really. I think we played against Sheffield Wednesday in like a testimonial game or a friendly game.
Yeah.
And then Rotherham games, and Doncaster games, but not the same as the Mansfield game. Mansfield game was the what was considered by the fans as the big rivalry.
Trying to play this ball out of trouble, Chesterfield, and a beautiful ball to Waller. Shot! Yes! A lovely goal, and Chesterfield take the lead in the 35th minute.
88-89 then, you scored loads of goals that season. Like you said, you took on a few penalties, but you had like 10 goals. It was obviously the season we got relegated, but personally you had a great season, I suppose.
Yeah, that was it. It was bittersweet, really, because as far as return and seasons, it was personally my best season, I would say, with the club. But it culminated, unfortunately, with us getting relegated in that last game against Reading, I think it was.
And obviously Paul Hart took over that chunk of that season, didn't he? What was that change like?
Yeah, I mean, John went and Kev took over, and then after Kev left, Paul came in, And as I say, I'd been in the team and then continued in the side under him, and made a good impression with him for him making me captain for a period of it. And as I say, I was obviously having the best part of my career there, both playing and contributing with goals, and took on the responsibility of taking penalties, and had that for that season, the majority of that season, and it contributed to me getting into double figures with goals, and that obviously would have, and anybody who scores goals from midfield is going to attract a little bit of attention from elsewhere. Not that I knew anything, or there was nothing said to me about, this is happening and that's happening. There was none of that, but you knew that, like any player, if I'm doing well, I'm scoring goals, maybe one or two people will be interested in me. But I just got my head down and carried on, and
How did you end up becoming penalty taker? Was that something you have a go in training, or was it?
I think so. I think I'd sort of done it, playing as a youngster, and then when it became available, I forget whether it was Dave Waller who was penalty taker before me. Could have been,
maybe, yeah,
and maybe the usual, missed one or missed a couple, and then I wouldn't remember which was my first penalty I took, but said, look, I'll take it, and scored. So if you step up for that first one and score, it continues usually. And then there was one game where we played Gillingham at home, and I'd scored one or two penalties, so I thought I could take them then. So then decided from my usual head down and bury it to placing it, and I missed. And we were 1-0 up, I think. We were 1-0 up, and I missed the penalty, and then they went down the other end and scored. So it was like, well, double whammy. We should have been 2-0 up, and that's 1-1.
Yeah.
And then I think Andy Rolfe scored to make it 2-1 to us in the second half, and then we got another penalty, and Dave Waller said, I'll take it. I went, no, I'm gonna redeem myself here, and thinking I've got to score this, and then there was no messing about there. It was like head down and back to my smash it into the net routine, and it worked, and scored, and we won 3-1. So it all turned out all right, and because of that, I carried on taking penalties. And I think I'm not sure whether it was just taken off me, or I think I might have been out of the side. I think I might have been out of the side for a bit, and Bryn Gunn came, and he was a prolific penalty taker, and he assumed the penalty taking, and it just continued from then, really.
So in that season, you scored loads of goals. Scored against Mansfield again. Scored against Fulham again. And Sheffield United as well, in that 3-1 win against Sheffield United.
Yeah, I had a little purple patch there with the goals you're talking about, over a period of about a week or so, maybe 2 weeks, where I scored like 4 goals, I think. And I got 2 against Fulham, a penalty and a free kick. We won 4-1 at home. That was a really good win. And then the game at Bramall Lane, which is etched in mind and will be more than any other game, purely because of the connection. Sheffield lad, born and bred in Sheffield, a Sheffield Wednesday fan, got loads of mates who are Sheffield United fans, and going there, playing a game there at Bramall Lane, where I've watched Sheffield Wednesday play games, to actually be on the pitch playing, but not only playing, being captain. was like, this is it. This is what I wanted to play football for this type of experience and feeling. And then within, I don't know what minute it was. You'll probably tell me. Not long, I don't think. Early in the first half, ball gets fired. I think it was Gavin McDonald broke into the box, fired it across. It's ricocheted off one of their defenders who's tried to clear it. It's come to me really quick. I've just controlled it or got it, and it's under my feet, and then realised I've got it this quick, so I did, and it just pinged into the top of the net, and it was at the top end where my mates are watching the game, and I've had to sort of stop myself from celebrating in front of their cop to turn myself around to celebrate, and then wanting to just do 100-meter sprint all the way up the pitch to our fans. It's a bit too far away, so I just had to do my own celebration, and the big celebration came after the game.
I bet it did.
That's a story in itself. I mean, that was just fantastic. And Adi Shaw tells it really well because it was one of his first games, Adi's. And, we've won the game 3-1. Played out of our skins. They're top of the table. We're struggling down in the bottom end of the table. So it was a shock result, really, us going there and winning 3-1. But the rivalry between the clubs was there because of the proximity, and the end was packed with Chesterfield fans, and we just all went up there, and Adi was like thinking, why is everybody celebrating like that? And I think what he did is he sort of shook hands with one or two players, and then went to go down the tunnel, and he said he got to the changing rooms and turned around and nobody was coming in. He thought, where is everybody? and so he then turned around and come back down the tunnel and saw me on the fence, like this with the fans. And he's thinking, it's a good result, winning 3-1, but are they overdoing it a bit? And I just explained to him, Adi, it's like you as a Sunderland fan scoring against Newcastle. And he went, all right, okay, fair point. So yeah, it was a fantastic experience from everything about it. Playing there, captaining the team, winning the game, and scoring. It couldn't have been any better experience for me.
Yeah, I suppose back then you didn't really keep shirts or memento. I don't know. Did you keep mementos as well back then?
No, it weren't the same then.
Yeah.
It weren't the same. Otherwise, I would have had adorning like a lot do. Particularly from games like that. That would have been on my wall and should be as prize. Possession. That shirt and signed by. It'd been great. That would be fantastic if I had that. That shirt in a frame signed by all the players of the day and from both teams.
Yeah, I suppose back then you just put it in the wash, didn't you, and then wore it for the next
one. You weren't allowed to keep it. That's
you only go one season, weren't you?
I mean, if I'd have took that off and chucked that into the crowd, the kit man would have gone, you better get in and get that. You've got to wear that next week.
McDonald looks for Morris. Good chance. And it's there. Chesterfield in front. After some 12 minutes play, and it's just the thing what Sheffield United didn't want down here. But Brian Smith, unfortunately, not clearing his lines for Sheffield United as well as what he should have done. So after some 13 minutes, the score, Sheffield United 0, Chesterfield 1.
So after you obviously left Chesterfield in the March of 1990, wasn't it? And went to Bristol Rovers for 20,000, was it? Something like that?
Yeah. yeah, that's what I'm led to believe. Yeah, which was a reasonable fee, let's say.
Yeah, it is, isn't it?
Not a lot of money paid in them days for players. So yeah, I just remember that season. I'd had a little bit of time in and out of the team. Little bit of dropped off on form. I felt as though it culminated with a couple of injuries that I picked up as well. But yeah, my form hadn't been as great as the previous season. But I've been in the team for a fair few games, and then I'd been in and out a little bit leading up to a game against Exeter on a Tuesday night, and I was just at home on the afternoon of that game, and get a phone call from Paul Hart, and thinking, oh, this isn't normally good on the day of a game. Maybe I'm getting dropped or whatever. So I take the call, and he said, "Oh, I've got Jerry Francis on the phone, or just been on the phone to me, interested in signing, speaking to you to sign for Bristol Rovers." And that was the first I knew about it. It wasn't as though anybody had talked to me about it previously, or there was any rumours or anything like that. It was just completely out of the blue. This interest. So I went, "Oh, right. What about tonight?" And he went, "Oh, yeah, you're playing tonight." He said, "And Kenny Abbott is going to come to the game, who was Jerry's assistant." He said, "But they want to talk to you and potentially to go down tomorrow, the day after the game on the Tuesday night, the Wednesday, go down and speak to them, and because the transfer deadline's a Thursday, so if it's going to happen, it's got to be done fairly quick." So yeah, he said, "Just prepare for the game as usual, play the game, and then we'll take it from there." So I went and seen him before the game, and he just said, "Just get your head on the game, play, and then we'll have a chat afterwards, and then see what happens." So played the game, and I scored. Actually, we lost the game 2-1, but I scored our goal, and didn't have a outstanding game, but obviously contributed and did okay. But as it happened, during that game, Tony Bryan went up for a header and fell awkwardly and landed on his back and was struggling and coughing up blood and was in a bit of a state. And after the game, Paul said, "Look, Tony's obviously got injured. We're not sure of how bad it is. The deal's off, or the move's likely to be off." He said, "But I'll know a bit more tomorrow." He said, "Come and see me first thing in the morning, and if he's okay, then you can sort of carry on down to Bristol and chat to him as planned." And that's what I did. And I went in, and he said, "Oh, it's good news on Tony. He's not as bad as we first thought, because I can't lose you and him. It looks like he's going to be fine. So go down and speak to him." He said, "But if it's not what you want, no problem. Don't do it. Just if it's not right." And so he put the ball in my court, and I went down there and chatted to him over Wednesday, and then into Thursday, and then I had to make a decision then, and yeah, I was reluctant because I was enjoying my time at Chesterfield, but I just looked at it as it was a good step in standard for me. At that time, Chesterfield were, bottom half of the fourth division, and Bristol Rovers were going for promotion from the old third division into second division. So that's what made my mind up, really. I thought, if they get promotion, all of a sudden I'm going to be a second division player.
Yeah.
One below the top. So that's what swayed it for me, really. I remember when I signed, they offered me a 3-year contract, and I didn't have an agent at that time or anything like that. I just used the PFA to help, with the negotiation side of things. And I remember phoning them up and saying, "Look, I've been offered this deal. I want to go give it a go, but I've never, moved away, and I don't know about settling, things like that. They've offered me 3 years. Shall I sign it, or shall I ask for 2 years?" And they went, "Well, it's up to you. The security of a 3-year contract, but maybe if you're happier to sign a 2-year contract, you might get a better deal money wise or whatever." So that's what I did, and in hindsight, it's foolish, really. I should have signed a longer contract, because the money weren't, vastly different. But yeah, I did do, and it came to back to bite me in the end, because I was there for 2 years, and I lost half of it through a knee injury that I'd sort of had a little bit at Chesterfield. It had sort of rectified itself, and then it flared up again halfway through my time at Rovers, and it turned out that when I had a scan, it was a bad one, and I had to have an operation on a knee tendon that kept me out for 10 months. So I lost half the contract then. 2 years contract, I lost half of it. And if I'd have signed the 3-year contract, I'd have had another year to, prove myself still further. Because in that time, Jerry Francis had left, who signed me. Martin Dobson had been and gone, and I'd not even featured or trained with him because I was injured. And then Dennis Rowford took over. And even though Dennis put me in the team for the last sort of 8 or 9 games of the season, and I performed, pretty well, I felt. I didn't do enough, obviously, to earn another contract. Whereas if I'd had a year to run, I'd have had that to try and prove myself still further the following season. But hindsight and all that business. I came out of pro football and went back into part-time football with Cheltenham. I got 1 or 2 trials that I went on, and 1 or 2 clubs interested, but nothing concrete. So I just went and trained at Cheltenham, and I just got put onto them by a friend of mine who knew the manager. And I went there and enjoyed it, and just stayed there and settled into playing part-time football and getting a job.
Yeah. And you won the FA trophy with them, didn't you? So it's
yeah. I mean, when I joined them, they'd just come down from the conference, so they were in the league below the conference, the Southern Premier, as it was called then. And we had 2 or 3 seasons of almost getting back into the conference and not quite managing it. And around that sort of time was when John Duncan came back to Chesterfield. Would that have been 95?
Yeah, 93, maybe?
93.
94.
Right, so around that sort of time when they went back, Kev Randall rang me up. So, I thought it was a bit later than that, but it would have been, 94, 93, 94, and said, what are you doing? I said, oh, well, Cheltenham. I've signed a contract here. He said, oh, can you get out of it? I went, don't know. He said, because, we know you. We're looking for players, and, we know you from your time here. You can come back and see if you, can get yourself back into full-time football. I was obviously open to that, but Cheltenham weren't. And they weren't prepared to let me go for nothing. And Chesterfield weren't going to buy me. Of course they weren't. So that just didn't materialise, unfortunately. But my time at Cheltenham, I loved it. It was great. And then when it got to the mid-90s, Steve Cottrell came into the club, who was an ex-player, and he played a little bit, and then as like player manager, and then he sort of concentrated on the managing side and got one or two better players in, and that's when we started to be successful then. And yeah, the another highlight of my career is obviously being able to say that I played at the old Wembley, albeit the FA Trophy, but great experience, and certainly it is when you win.
Yeah, exactly.
And lift the trophy, and nothing finer than being at that place and winning a trophy, and again, a dream of a young kid kicking a ball around, watching all MFA Cup finals and thinking, I hope I get a chance to play in one of them. Unfortunately, I didn't, but I got to play there at some level, and yeah.
So we're kind of coming to the end, but you ended up getting ended up working in football, obviously. So some people kind of drift out the game, but you ended up, and you're still in it. Yeah.
So had the success at Cheltenham as a player in winning at Wembley in the trophy, and then the following season, winning promotion from the conference into the Football League, and being part of the team that broke into the Football League for the first time in their history, and then that was then a decision for not just me, but for a number of players to turn pro. I did, and had the final sort of 2 years of my playing career back as a professional with Cheltenham in the old third division as it was then.
Yeah,
and had those 2 years, and then during the second one, I'd not played much. I'd been on the bench, been in the squad, but not playing. And Steve Cottrell said, "Do you want to be, do you want to carry on playing, or do you want to be a coach?" And I made the decision to finish playing at 35 and go into coaching. So I had a period there where I was coaching the youth team, and then over the sort of next 8 years, I was coaching their first team as well. First team coach, was assistant manager, and then I left there in 2009 after a real good sort of period working with some really good guys in John Ward and Keith Downing, and then Bobby Gould for a short period of time, and then left. Left Cheltenham in 2009 and was out of football as far as work as a coach, and looking and wondering where my next challenge would be, whether I would be a coach somewhere else or go into management. And nothing took my fancy that came up. And then, as it happened, Adi Shaw, who I spoke about earlier, who I'm good friends with and remain good friends with, he'd come into Cheltenham in his job as regional manager of the club, and I just remember him walking into the office, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "Oh, I've just got a job with the Football League." So I knew of that role through Adi's work coming in, and then when I was out of work, Adi contacted me and said, "Look, the job I'm doing, I was going to move to Bristol and do all those clubs in that area, but I didn't do, and I stayed in Chesterfield." This is him speaking. "And now I'm going to take on the clubs in the north and stay here, but there's a job in the south. What do you think?" So I said, "Okay, I'll give it a go." And that was the start of it, him sort of tipping me off about it, me going for the job and managing to get it. And that was at the back end of 2009, and here we are 14 years later. I just thought, yeah, I think I'll enjoy that because it's involvement in football. It's youth football, which I have a passion for. And yeah, I've not looked back. I've not sort of regretted it one bit, and looked over and gone, well, I don't want to do this anymore, and hankered for being a coach or a manager. I get my football fix from going to watch under nines right the way through to under 16s, and then under 18s and under 21s games, and as part of my job, and then also still going and watching first team games, and so I get all that involvement in my work with the different clubs. I've got 8 clubs that I look after in the southwest, and I do the same support role with them. They all get funding, all these clubs, to run their academies, and myself and Inga, and a group of other regional managers have our group of clubs that we look after, and do the same support role when we go into them, and then they get audited off the back of that to retain their academy status. So we're their support, and their internal help, if you like.
So it's great. So it's great to find that route through, isn't it? Spoken to loads of footballers that fell out of it, or some of them retired with injuries and then find it difficult and go into coaching because how it ended for them and things like that. So for you to kind of play to a good age and then move into coaching and then this, it's kind of, you must feel quite fortunate with how it's all happened.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, we've just talked, and I've rambled on about all my good bits, some little bit of bad bits, but just thinking about it all now, from being that little schoolboy who dreamt about being a footballer and it happening for me, and then being able to stay in football full time, well, part time to start with, then full time, then back to part time, then back to full time, then at the end of my career, being fortunate enough to be offered a role in coaching and do that for a period of years, and then going into the role that I've been doing for the last 14 years, and now at the ripe old age of 57, I'm still involved in football, and hope to be for many, many years to come.